How to create change in your life. Change can be painful, but the purpose of this video is to give you a step-by-step framework to make change as easy as possible for you. As someone in the past who I felt like I lived the same 6 months over and over and over for a few years, it wasn't until I put intentional work behind creating change and creating more helpful habits to optimize for my goals. So I promise you, by the end of this video, you will understand how to create change within your life. With that being said, my name's Richardson. I'm a coach here on Life in Your Terms, and I make these videos to help share my ideas and share my experience to help you move through these problems quicker than I ever could. Today's plan is to show you a 4-step framework. Each step is going to be breaking down a problem and then using that problem to move through it, with the final step being the most important, so you're going to want to stick around till the end. The first step in the process is going to be to stabilize or identify the problems that we want to change. And the best mindset or framework that you can go about this with is to take a third-person view. And what I mean by this is, ask yourself, if your best friend was in this situation, what kind of advice would you give them? Because that gives you two things. Number one, it's going to take your emotions out of it. And we're creating change. Our emotions can hold us up a little bit. So what you want to do is try to pull yourself out of that emotional state as much as possible. On top of that, we think that our opinion on how we should change is what we should do, but how we want to change may not be the right way to change. What I mean by this is, if you want to add on 30 pounds of muscle, but you love running, that's not very conducive or helpful to adding on that muscle. I know that's a really surface level example, but you can apply that to a lot of different areas to kind of see the point that how you want to change isn't always the best way. So by taking that third-person view and asking yourself, what would I tell my best friend in this situation, it can help take away that emotional piece and the piece about what you want to change and how you want to do it. Now, on top of creating that third-person view, another way you can go about changing is taking the balance wheel. Because of the balance wheel in the description below, it can help you lay out your life in a whole pie: professional, relationships, health, and resources. And that comprises your whole life. And you can get a really good idea of where you're at and what problems you may want to change. Because once you do the balance wheel, you could then look at what's working. So maybe fitness for you is a 9 out of 10. You're really disciplined with fitness, you're really consistent, stuff like that. But then maybe your relationship is a 2 out of 10. What you can do is you could take principles from your 9 out of 10 area and apply them to the 2 out of 10. Because I'd imagine the relationship's a 2 out of 10 because maybe you're not very consistent with it. Maybe you're not putting the time in that it needs, but you're doing that with fitness. So you could apply that same ideology. And it works all the way around the balance wheel. Any area, if you have a 9 out of 10, you can often take principles from that area and apply it to your lower areas. So you can ask yourself, what's working? What's not working? What do I want to be different? And with what you want to be different, you ask yourself, why do you want to make this change? Why is it important to take your relationship from a 2 out of 10 to an 8 out of 10? What in your life will change? And you do this for a very specific reason that I'm going to explain later. So that's the first step, is to stabilize or identify. The second step is to visualize, and specifically visualize, what does amazing look like? So with your relationship, what does an 8 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10 relationship look like in the next 12 months, in the next 5 years? What does that look like? Because when you ask yourself that question, then you have where you're at and where you want to go. Because then you could also start to visualize, what does future you look like? What is amazing future you? And again, you do this for a very specific reason I will explain in the next step. You ask yourself, what does amazing look like in this area? What does amazing look like in terms of myself? And then you start to visualize all the work it's going to take to get from where you're at to where you want to go. And then once you visualize, it is now time to strategize. It is time to think about your plan of what you need to do to make these changes. And the reason that you visualize what future you looks like, or what future amazing looks like in terms of your character, is because you can use that line of thinking to help come up with a strategy. Now, what I mean by this is, you think about, okay, what would future me do? What would the successful version and the amazing version of me think? What would they do? how would they act in the situation? How would they go about attacking this problem? Because sometimes if we can just reframe to a different level or different level of expertise, sometimes the answers are there. And also, another great question you can ask yourself about future you is, what would they not do? Because that can be a really good place to start. You may not have the answers of how to go from a 2 out of 10 relationship to an 8 out of 10, or a 2 out of 10 in your job environment or job satisfaction to a 10 out of 10. But what I can guarantee you is that if you think about what future you would do or what they wouldn't do, a lot of answers will show themselves. So in a relationship that goes from a 2 out of 10 and 8 out of 10, I guarantee future you wouldn't put the relationship on the back burner. They wouldn't not, compliment their partner or not put time into the relationship. What would they do then? And then you can start to get the inverse of those things to give you the answers. So that's the reason that you do that. That's the reason the last step you visualize what future amazing you looks like, because you can use that inverse thinking to then get the answers within strategy. Because once you start to get those answers, piece those together, it becomes really easy to start making it happen. And what you want to think about again is where you're at now to where you want to go, and what does amazing look like. And you're not going to have the answers for all the way there, but you can try to figure out the first step. So maybe in your 2 out of 10 relationship, the first step is a weekly date, and it could be as simple as a walk. But that's the first step to go from a 2 out of 10 to a 3 out of 10. And maybe the next step is different communication strategies where you don't show Gottman's 4 horsemen. I'm not going to get into that, but there's just examples of first steps from to go where you're at to where amazing looks like. So the fourth and final step is to execute. And with execution, you want to remember why you are doing this. That's why you lay that out in the first step. That's why you ask yourself why. Because if you can identify a clear why, it'll be much easier to not quit. If you're just doing it to change or for what you don't really have a reason, you'll be much more likely to quit along the way. But if you can hold that why near and dear, it makes it a lot easier. For me, with these YouTube videos and the work I do, it's because I want to get better at the act of working itself. I want to get better at the quantity and quality of my work, and the one sticky note I have on my desk is the work is the goal. Because to me, it truly is. And I went from perfectionist to having to change all of that about the outcome stuff to changing completely to process and work-based. It was a big transformation I had. And for me, my why was because I knew I'd be more effective and get more done and be able to make the impact I want if I focused on the work, if I didn't focus on the outcome. And so that was my reason for change. And I've held it near and dear, and I think it's helped me a lot, and it's made me money so far. So it's worked, and I feel like I've made a better impact. And so holding yourself and remembering why you are doing this will help you continue. And execution is the most important step, because yes, 1 through 3 are very helpful in getting things done, but truly taking action is, I think, where a lot of people stop and they don't do as good of a job in. So this is the most important, is to make it happen. And an easy way to make it happen is ask yourself, what barriers are you going to face along the way? So what things are going to come up for you when you start this journey? Because if you can do that, you're going to act in a more proactive state instead of a reactive state. If you just act as things come at you, you're going to be much more likely to quit on this thing. Example, if your goal is to go to the gym 5 days a week, well, you got to be able to be proactive about, okay, I'm not going to want to get up when my alarm goes off, and I'm going to set out my clothes, and I'm going to make it really easy for me to execute. And by doing those things, you'll make it proactive. And the function of doing those things is systems. What systems can you put in place to make the barriers easier to overcome and make it easier for you to succeed? Excuse me. I believe that with systems, the purpose of them is to make the outcome more likely to happen and easier to happen. So if your goal again is to go to the gym 5 days a week, it makes sense to set out your water bottle, your clothes, your shoes, everything that you need to make it very easy for you to get up and go to the gym. And with that being said, another system you could have in place is that, like, if you don't get up within the first 5 minutes, you don't get a certain reward or whatever, if that works for you. If that's something, you just got to find systems that work for you to make it easier for you to execute. And some systems might be elimination. So instead of staying up until 10 p.m. watching your show when you know you got to get up at 4, taking out that show and going to bed at 8 or 9 instead to make it easier. That could be a system for you. So that's the point. You got to kind of play with these things with execution of what makes it easiest for you to take action. For me, it's sticky notes and quarterly objectives. Those things really help me, but maybe it's not for you. You have to find what works for you, and that's why it's really helpful to rely on the balance wheel of what areas are working. So if you haven't taken the balance wheel yet, go ahead and take that in the description, because again, you can really rely on this throughout this process to create this change within your life. And also, if you like this video, go ahead and comment, because that tells me what you guys like and what you guys want me to change. On top of that, if you'll like and subscribe as well, that'd be really helpful for the channel. And I'll see you guys in the next one.